On this episode of Hope and Healing Chats, we're going to flip the script. Most betrayed partner resources are geared towards women, but women can be sex addicts too. So where do betrayed men go for support? Today, I'm joined by Adam Nisenson, author of A Man's Guide to Partner Betrayal, and we'll be digging into the rarely discussed experience of men facing betrayal trauma. I'm your host, Manifa Ellis Addy, and before we go any further, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thank you for joining us today, Adam.
It's great to be here. Thanks.
So in this line of work, as CSATs, we don't usually encounter male betrayed partners. So I imagine that was a part of what inspired this work for you?
Well, it was multiple things that inspired it. The first thing is I'm a betrayal partner. My ex-wife had an affair, cheated on me. And then as a CSAT, I started getting men that were coming in that they actually would start admitting that they experienced betrayal themselves, and they just held it close to their chest. They never talked about it until they started getting into, I would say, a safe environment of doing therapy. So those multiple things. And then the other part was, I just feel like men, I think we get the short end of the stick a little bit when it comes to sharing feelings and being vulnerable. And it was just all tied together for me, I would say.
And we do see that often, where lots of times they just don't have the language of how to put these feelings together because how men are socialized. It's just not, women are coddled when it comes to expressing yourself, and then men, it's like, be a man. Whatever.
Yeah. Also, I think another thing, statistically, it's just fact, there's not as many male therapists in the world. And one of the things I did when I started my therapy practices, I decided I was only going to work with men. And I wanted men to identify with me and relate to me, and I wanted to be safe. And I wanted to let them know that it's okay. I like to say, real men go to therapy, right? And real men cry and real men feel, and those are the bravest men, I think. So trying to create that persona out there and let men know it's safe. And I want to be one of those resources for that.
And it's so funny you said that, because I'm I honestly didn't even think about that. But there was only 2 men in my cohort, and I think only 1 actually graduated from my grad school cohort. So yeah.
I don't know I want to say maybe it's 20% or something. I looked it up a long time ago. I don't know if anyone really knows, but I had the same thing when I was in school. It was, whatever. It was 30 something people, and there were 4 guys, right? Or something like that.
I love your book, by the way.
Thank you. I brought a copy just in case.
Me too. We both have copies. Twins. As a clinician, it was just great to have this model written out. The male betrayal trauma recovery model. It is a mouthful. So because I know you have the acronyms. Can you talk more about how you came up with this model? Because it is pretty easy to follow in the way you laid it out in the book.
Yeah, I wouldn't look. I'm not inventing the wheel here, right? It's a lot of these principles and stuff have been around. What really just happened for me is, as I started getting more clients that were betrayed, I started noticing a lot of big patterns. And just from those patterns and working for men, I came up with this model with my 7 stages. I would say for men, though, what I really notice is the biggest factor is the struggle with the ego wound. So there's that. And also, let me just add, right, from my own experience, over 13 years ago, I didn't have any help. And they're really today we're talking about betrayal, I think, is becoming, I know I'm on a side topic here, but betrayal is becoming more, it's all over the media now. It's on tons of TV shows, all these ridiculous reality shows where they want people to betray each other, right? It's, I think it's so much more common. And so there's that factor, but back to my stages is the other thing I really discovered on my own journey, and I noticed men going through, was this competitiveness and this jealousy factor. I don't want to necessarily get into stereotypes, but there's some truths to stereotypes, and men tend to be can get very jealous. They can get they can scheme to get even, if you will. That competitiveness, I think, is ingrained in the masculine DNA. So So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but
No,
yeah,
yes, no, you did. Because men and women do process things differently. I noticed there were certain things in there that, like you said, you weren't inventing the wheel. So a lot of it's like, okay, I am familiar with this, but then there was other tidbits. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't even think of that. Like I wouldn't think to, talk so much about the ego and go that deeply into it because
yeah,
I'm not a man and I'm
yeah,
mostly working with women. So that's not something that would even be on my radar. You mentioned the 7 stages. Does someone move through them linearly? No,
no,
none of it's ever linear. Oh.
just like life itself, right? I mean, no one moves through it in a linear way. I'll say that I see that the ego aspect that seems to be the one that keeps coming back,
Mm,
and part of what I think really gets the ego aspect is the struggle with intrusive thoughts, which I think in betrayal work, and I'm guessing for women too, is one of the most difficult things to navigate and to understand and to control. And actually, in my men's group the other night, that was the topic, and so powerful to hear how these guys are just so stuck in that dissonance of maybe wanting to reconcile, and how do I get past these, like the feelings of wanting to heal and love her again, but then I keep getting these images and these thoughts and I can't get them out of my mind. And
hmm
I find in almost all betrayal work that's the hardest thing to deal with.
Yeah, because you can't really control those things. It just kind of comes in.
No, they surprise you when you don't want to be surprised, that's for
Yes,
sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
As someone with ADHD that does not enjoy picking up a book and reading it, I have to say, because I was like, oh, it's not an audiobook I'm going to have to read. But what I enjoyed is the layout of the book. It's very
Yeah.
repetitive and I like how you have the stage, then the practical steps, which I thought that was probably the best part, and then your personal experience. Can you talk about why you laid it out that way?
Thanks for noticing that. Actually, there was a lot of intention behind that.
Yeah.
So I got myself a little ADD going. I'm also dyslexic, and so for me, reading takes a long time, and the comprehension part, and so partly that's just how I process myself, and then the other part is back to stereotypes. But what I notice a lot with my clients, and men just don't always like to read, and men don't like to always journal. And so I wanted to make this in a way where it was easy, to step through it. It was easy to understand it. I didn't want it to be heavy clinical, and I wrote it like I'm a guy talking to guys because it's how I do it all day in my practice. I thought it was important to tell my story, and in chapters where it was appropriate. Most all the chapters end with my experience, and I will tell you that was therapeutic for me. I learned a lot about myself, and I kind of had to come get honest with myself a couple times throughout that process. Some of the things I wrote, I was like, dang man, I so screwed that up.
Really impressed by my experience part and the fact that you had it for every stage. It
Yeah.
makes it much more relatable. Because I mean, betrayal in itself makes someone so isolated that they have no one else to talk to. So even if they're not in a group, it's like, oh, this is someone like you're literally walking through it with them.
I'll tell you another part, since talking about the book. I have some dear friends, and I was going over the book stuff with them, and they asked me. They said, "What's your part? Where's your part, Adam?" And I was like, "I don't have a part, right? I was betrayed, right?" And there's truth to that, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to just say to everyone that's ever been betrayed, being betrayed was not your fault. Your partner made that choice. There's nothing I think anyone could ever do, even if you cheat on your partner, that doesn't give your partner permission to cheat on you. So I just
Yeah.
want to make that clear. But when my friends brought it up and I was really resistant, I thought about it. I was like, man, there was so much I could have done different. And I see clients all the time. There's a lot they can do different, right? It's how do you show up? How do you hold boundaries? How are you being accountable? How are you asking for what you want and need in the relationship, et cetera, et cetera. So I wrote that chapter too, which was difficult. I was reluctant, but I think it was a good add-on. So
You talk a lot about men's reluctance to talk about their feelings and emotions just because due to how men are socialized. And it
yeah,
reminds me of a conversation that I had with a friend where we were talking. basically about the same thing. And his response was, well, why would a man want to talk about his feelings? And when I was reading your book, that made me think, well, if that's kind of like the general response that men are getting, like, where do they go to have this space where they can talk about the betrayal and not get that kind of response?
I will tell you this. I have like in my current men's group and actually my past men's betrayal groups, it's interesting the spread. I have some guys, it's like it just happened, the betrayal. And I have some, it's been like a year or two. But then I have some guys, it's been 15 years, 18. I have a guy that's been 40 years. And what that tells me is, and I want all the men out there to hear this, is if you don't do the work on it, it doesn't go away. And if you don't do the work and things get better and you just want to fix it like most guys do, it still doesn't go away. And one day something's going to come and it's going to kick you in the backside and you're going to have to do the work, hopefully. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Yeah.
people I know, like in my circles, like men tend to want to avoid feelings. And it's just, I think it's part of that, like you were saying, the social expectations of what it means to be a man, the need to appear to be strong, fear of vulnerability. And most guys, when I grew up, it's not like my parents didn't tell me I couldn't cry, but it definitely, like, it wasn't encouraged. And often, like, playing sports, and things like that, I was always, buck up, you got this, just, this is like a chance, I think, for men to break that mold. Crying is the bravest thing a man can do. And yet it's the one thing, if one does it in public, he can be ridiculed,
Yeah.
which is so sad. I think our society, that's part of, I don't want to get into what's going on in the world today, but I'll say this is I wonder what would happen if men were more in tune with their emotions and there was more vulnerability in the world. I think it would be really different. I think it'd be definitely safer than it is today.
Oh, absolutely. Which 'cause when you said that, it just made me think of Brene Brown's work, and she talks about this the antithesis of shame is vulnerability. And she also talks about, she gives an example of, she was signing books, and a man was like, "Well, you only write books for women," and she was like, "Well, I only study women." And he said, "You see those girls over there?" It was like two daughters and his wife. He goes, "They would rather see me die on a hill than be vulnerable." So it's like even the atmosphere around is not welcoming, because men with men is one thing, but then men, even to women, how they're viewed is another. I've had clients tell me that as we're doing the work and they start talking about feelings, they're concerned that their wife's no longer going to be attracted to them because they're feeling like a girl and this doesn't feel manly. I just wanted to
That's,
point out, it's
yeah.
not just to men, it's, from how women relate to men also. Because not for nothing, women buy into the whole socialization of how men are also.
There is that. I see that too. And also at the same time, I still got to believe that. I think I got to believe most women want their man to be safe and they want him to be vulnerable. Most women want connection and vulnerability. And that's how I think we all feel safe. And men just don't realize that. You brought up the word shame. And I think that's super important in this work because being cheated on, I think for anyone, it holds a lot of shame. I think for a man, it plays into like what I call the ego trap in the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it screws over the whole outward persona of what I want everyone to believe I am and what I believe I am. And what I want everyone, man or woman, to know out there is the thing with shame is it's unspeakable often, right? We don't just go talk about our shame to someone. And when we don't talk about something like shame, it lets shame grow and it lets it increase its hold on us. And we
Yeah.
can't heal things that we don't talk about. And I find shame and shame and betrayal often like when you have something big you have to do and you're all nervous and scared, you make up all these stories and then you go do it. That wasn't that bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Almost right 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want everyone to know out there is that's true with betrayal shame and betrayal trauma is when you find someone to share it with, and someone, I would say someone who's trained or licensed to do this work, I think you'll feel safe. The other part is I want people to be aware of, and I'm guessing women do this too. I know a lot of men do it. Like we'll go tell our buddy, right? And our buddy will give us advice like, screw them, or you don't
Mm.
need them, or right,
Yeah.
or that's too bad, buddy. Let's because like the other guy's not gonna. I don't want to talk about this, right? And so where I'm going with this is, I think it's important to have support, and I think it's important to have a bestie or someone that you can talk to about this. Like, you don't want to broadcast this. You want to be really conscious of who and how many people you tell. But the person that you do confide in, I want you to set boundaries with them. I want you to tell them, I don't necessarily want your advice. I just want you to listen to me. I want you to let me know I'm going to be okay, even though I don't feel okay. Because often the advice you're going to get is going to be biased. And also, they don't understand the process or the principles or really how this is going to be navigated. And it's just like, man, I just need to be loved. I just need a shoulder to cry on, and I didn't have a therapist on my journey, but I had a men's group I was in, and they just held me. I would go and cry sometimes, or they would let me yell and punch a pillow, and that's all I needed. I needed to be witnessed.
I love that you mentioned setting boundaries for when you tell your story because, yeah, the advice, and it's coming from a good place, right? They want to protect you. So they're like, just forget about them. It's okay. But it's like you still have to live that life. So, and if that wasn't supportive, it just kind of enhances the pain that you're already in because it's already isolating in the first place. And then in telling your story, you're being vulnerable, trying to connect, and then it kind of cuts the connection.
Yeah. Or how about this? You tell a couple buddies, they talk smack about your partner and stuff like that, and then you reconcile, and then you're with them again, and then there's your buddies. I've worked with people in that situation too, right? It's super uncomfortable, super unhealthy.
And also with that, it's when you're stating boundaries, it's the practice of just stating what you need and then being in touch with what you need and being able to vocalize that. Because especially I know on the women's end, that is a thing that's they struggle with just saying what those needs are. So it's just good practice. And if the person can't do that for you, then
Yeah, then they're not safe for this topic, if you will. Should we talk boundaries, or where were you
I
going?
was literally going to go into boundaries. You're reading my mind because you said safe. So
Yeah,
that made me think of in the past, I've had a couple of, male betrayed partners. And anytime I tried to introduce boundaries, I'm used to attaching it to safety. And it never went over well. And I noticed in the book, you attach it to respect. And I thought that was very
none.
interesting because I know in working with men in general, the two things that they kind of subscribe to are anger and respect. Like those are the things that they know well. They can say respect. So I thought that was interesting. So I imagine that was intentional.
Yeah, it was. I'll just confess, sometimes when I'm working with my guys, I'll still use the word safe or safety. It's just so ingrained, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's really interesting, you bring that part up, because sometimes when I work with a guy, and if I'll say like, well, what do you need to feel safe? And I'm a
Yeah.
man. What do you mean? I am safe, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're
Exactly.
right. And so I have to flip it, but it's respect. It's what do you need so that you feel that you're understood? What do you need so your partner respects so you can heal? And often I find, gosh, so many of the guys I work with don't even understand boundaries, or they struggle with boundaries, or they think boundaries, it's easy to make boundaries more into like, I'm going to punish them for doing this to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A boundary is never punishment. A boundary, like the way I always describe it is it's like you're driving at night on a curvy mountain road, and if there's no guardrails up, that's really scary, and there's a good chance you're going to fall off the road. And
Mm-hmm.
so boundaries are those guardrails. And even if you hit them, you'll bounce back, you'll get back on course, right? You won't die, you won't fly off the cliff. So like even in the book, I think I mentioned, on my journey, man, I sucked at boundaries because I was so scared to push my then wife away. Like I was so afraid, if I tell these are my things I need and this is what it looks like, that she's going to say screw you and she's going to leave. But ultimately, because I didn't hold the boundaries, and I pretended as if, it still ended, because there was also nothing for her to respect our marriage.
Mm,
Boundaries are the hardest thing, I think, for people to do. And I think coming up with those non-negotiable, right? The ones that are like, if you do this, I'm leaving. That's so scary to admit to. But I'll tell you, when you have that clarity and when your partner has the clarity and they really understand what's at stake, I think it shows you instantly where we're at, what's probably going to happen.
absolutely. Because there's information in that.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
women's end, and I don't know if this happens on the male side also, but I'll often hear, I made the boundaries, but they're not following them. Like it's once
All
again
the
back to
time.
the punishment, control, and it's like, but there's information in that. If they're not following it, what does that mean for you? That doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's like, okay, well then be done with the boundaries. It's like, okay, you're getting clarity, but you're not really paying attention to the clarity because they're communicating to you. There's a behavioral truth outside of the content truth of this whole process.
Boundaries are the bedrock of reconciling. You can't have them. You can't reconcile without it. The other part, like, look, not every betrayal relationship reconciles. I don't even know what the statistics are, but I would say this is a painful yet great opportunity to learn and grow. And boundaries, really, what I learned on my journey is I don't know if I had that much self-respect for myself during those times because I wasn't willing to truly state what I needed for
Yeah.
respect. So I didn't
Mhm.
respect myself. My own self-worth was knocked down. And yeah, boundaries, guys and
Yeah.
ladies, everyone.
Yeah. No,
Like,
yeah, we all need them. Shifting a little bit,
yeah, shift.
because you talk about redefining masculinity for yourself in order to heal, and you also refer to it as the gift in betrayal.
Yeah,
I just
there's
wanted
a
you,
gift in it.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
wanted you to talk more about, like, expand on that, about the whole like, what does that mean to redefine your masculinity?
It's a lot of what we've kind of been talking about. It's so many of the guys I work with, and one of the things I love about this work is men, if they choose, they get to discover their heart. They get to discover vulnerability. They get to learn how to truly express their needs and to be brutally honest with themselves. Betrayal kills self-worth, self-love, and self-esteem. As we go through life, parts of us die and parts of us have to be rebuilt. Midlife crisis, I think, in therapy is kind of a bad word. I think it's often used as an excuse. And I think it's a turning point in someone's life. I think betrayal can be that turning point in your life where you get to discover you. You get to put down the facade. So many men I work with, that ego wound, they live in their ego. I mean,
Mm,
I did too, right? It's like, what kind of car do I drive? What's my job? How often am I smoking cigars? All those stereotypical kind of things. Betrayal kills all that. And all you're left with is yourself. I want you to find the self. And what do you want that self to be? And how do you want to show up in the world? And especially the men I work with that have kids, what are you modeling to your sons and your daughters? Are you making it safe for your daughters to be with a man? Are they getting to
mm,
learn like a man can be vulnerable and can be safe to talk to? Are you teaching that to the boys? And I just think about how different, again, how different would the world be? That's what I love about the work is these guys, you get to go through a death, through the hero's journey, and through that journey and through that descent, all those parts die, and you get to find a new you. And you get to assess, how do I want to be seen in the world? And then the other beautiful part about that is if you do the work, and if your marriage ends, relationship ends, or whatever, and one day you're back out there, you're going to attract a totally different kind of partner.
yeah,
And the
absolutely.
odds are it'll be healthy, it'll be different, it'll go beyond what you ever imagined a relationship could be.
Because I know the constant fear is, I don't trust myself. I'm going to pick the same moving forward. And I'm like, well, not if you do the work. If you do the work, that's not even going to be where
Oh,
your
yeah.
frequency is.
I have
And
guys that don't do the work and then they get in a new relationship. They're like, it's the same thing. And I'm like, I know. Isn't that awesome?
like, the universe is
Told
trying to
you.
teach you something. We're trying, so let's try it again. I also appreciated how unbiased you were in the basically stay or leave, especially when you went through this. You have your own path, but that didn't necessarily influence how you wrote about that section of the book.
I think my journey is important in this work and it can relate to people, but I just had a call earlier today because he wanted, like, how did you do this? And I said, well, I'll tell you how I did it, but how you do it's up to you. Every situation's different. Every human experience is different. So, but I don't know. Sometimes I think it'd be nice if therapists were a little bit more transparent.
1,000% agree with that. Because, especially I feel like in this work, because it's so isolating, it's nice when they can, hear about, someone else or your own experience, because then they just feel like, okay, it'll help them to open up. But I know that goes
Yeah.
against the traditional, what we learned in
Yeah.
grad school.
I might not be too much of a traditional therapist because I always like when I'm going to therapy and when I'm looking for a new therapist, I never want a book smart therapist. I want a
Yeah.
life smart therapist. And
Hmm.
I think that's too, like in this work I'm doing as the betrayal shrink, the feedback I get from men is like they love that I went through it. They love that when I actually say, wow, that must be hard, or wow, I understand. They actually know that I do.
Yeah.
And I think that's super important in this kind of work.
Last but definitely not least,
Yeah.
where do we find your book?
Where do you find all books today?
Amazon.
Ama- yes, Amazon. My website, Betrayal Shrink, has actually I have a workbook that's out in the journal. It's a small little workbook on trust after betrayal. I'm working on a little workbook for intrusive thoughts. I'm doing all those on my own. My publisher, I'm working on a big workbook that's going to go with this book. Taking me longer than I thought, but that happens sometimes. But yeah, my website, I have tons of content. I have blogs. I have a podcast too now. I'm not doing guests yet, but you will be a guest one day.
Thank you very
But it's
much. I'm going to hold you to that.
no, 100%. Stuff's hard to do, right? There's a lot of work involved. So it's just me talking and there's short podcasts. It's called Men Get Cheated On Too. So yeah, I'm just trying to create content and resources so guys don't feel alone because I think we've been so marginalized in this sector, in this part of psychology. So that's kind of my mission.
Love it. Thank you again, Adam, for joining us. And if you found this info helpful, check out the links in the description below to connect with Adam or grab your own copy of his book. And as always, remember to embrace your healing journey. Every step forward brings a new hope for tomorrow. See you next time.